it's me, Vicky Marie, and I wasn't intending to do this live till later on. I've got one Spanish class later. Anyway, to cut a very long story short, and I won't bore you with all my problems, but I've had some bad news this morning. So I'm sort of in a bit of a tiz about everything. And so I wanted to do the live because when I promised to do it, alive about the riots, I wanted to bring, we're going to look at some positivity as well. We're going to look at lots of things, very emotional things. So I thought it's probably better that I do it, get it over with now, because later I might be get too angry or something. I don't know. Because not with you, not with all you, but when life sometimes just sort of anyway. So basically, I'm doing the live now. Now, first thing I want to say, apart from thank you to everyone, as usual, as per the banner, thanks to everybody for all your support. That's really appreciated. And that's what keeps me going, of course, with this channel, doesn't it? It means that your support, either subscribing, liking, members, etc. And I think it's just you and me at the moment, BF. So that's quite nice. I can say hello to you. But if this live fills up as it goes on, I probably won't be able to interact too much because I've got a lot that I want to get through. And I want to concentrate on saying all the things that I want to say. So the first thing I want to say is remember these 3 girls, because all this that's happened in the last week that's made everybody very emotional, all the riots, everybody's gone a little bit loopy, haven't they? And I think it's something to do with the weather as well, the heat. Also, it's been a super full moon. Just people sort of lost it a little bit, haven't they? And all this anger that everyone feels towards each other. And the death of these girls was a bit of the catalyst, wasn't it? And all the disinformation that came out, was spread on social media, or mainly on X. So Elon Musk has got a lot to, I'm absolutely incensed with Elon Musk. Elon Musk is one of those people. He's like the king of the world now, isn't he? He's got a lot of power because of his money, and he's now because he owns X, but he runs it. He's not a macro manager, is he? He's a micro manager. You can just imagine he probably goes through all these tweets, what everybody says, because he just wants to rule the world and tell everybody what to do instead of, just sticking to business. And the other thing that worries me a lot about Elon Musk is this power that he's got with his internet, Starlink, because he's trying to encourage, see it here in Spain now, it's all over the world, isn't it? People are signing up to it, but I would not sign up to it because I think Elon Musk is the sort of person could wake up tomorrow morning is in a bad mood with Spain because of something some Spanish person said, and then he thinks, I know what I'm going to do, just going to cut off the internet to Spain, because he does things like that, doesn't he? He uses his power. He's too powerful. He's not a politician. He's not elected. And he goes around sort of acting as if he sort of owns the world. So that's part of what I'll be talking about today, because of his trolling of Keir Starmer. Because, whatever you might think of Keir Starmer, it's not to Elon Musk to tell him what to do, is it? It's just or as Keir Starmer just got to accept that as part of being Prime Minister, you will get trolled, of course. Elon Musk won't be the only person who's pulling him up on things. But Elon Musk, he's the owner of X. What you get, because I wanted to comment on it and tell him to fuck off. But I just need to warn you, you might hear some bad language in this video because I'm, just, a bit stressed. But I just wanted to tell him, but out. What's it got to do with you? He's the owner of that of X. So you think if you did comment on it, he'd probably throw you off. He's thrown me off Twitter before, which I still don't really know why was thrown off it. So, you don't want to go on there and comment and say, hang on, argue with him. I noticed Keir Starmer hasn't replied to it. The latest thing he said is probably thinking about it, or not Keir Starmer, but his I don't know, comms team or whatever. But then, of course, he's got other things to think about as well. So anyway, I will be talking about that later. But yeah, what started it? What was the catalyst? Of course, was a terrible thing that happened in Southport only just over a week ago. I mean, it feels like a lot longer ago. That I don't know about you, but to me, it seems like ages ago, weeks ago. This feels like it's been going on for weeks. These riots and tit for tat, and oh my God. So anyway, I wanted to first of all just remember, because probably a lot of those rioters don't even know these girls' names. So, of course, here we've got Elsie Dot, who's actually the first little girl, Alice in the middle, and and Bebe at the end. And, they're really what everyone should be focusing on. It's helping those families get through that awful thing that's happened to them, and the community of Southport to recover, because, this is just it's sort of got forgotten in everything else, people using it to their political advantage, not for peaceful political protest, but for riots, criminal damage, really, it's not peaceful protest, what all of them are doing. Some of them are. The trouble is they're getting lost as well in all the violence. And I'm not only just talking about the far right. Now the Muslims, of course, they're starting to fight back because they're sick of being, their communities being put in danger, and that just must be the most awful thing. And I just know that if I was a Muslim now in Britain, or even if I had a dark skin, I wouldn't be leaving my house. I'd be terrified of going out, and that is terrible, isn't it? I'd be terrified of going out, whatever. And the other thing is, these people, they're taking their children with them. It's like Hitler Youth. They're actually taking their children and encouraging their children to chant racial slurs or shout "Paki" at people and things like that. Just awful. Anyway, we will be looking at that, but we're going to look at the positive side. We're going to look at some communities that have come together. We're going to look at the vigil that they had in Southport last night, the bubble vigil that they had. So we're going to look at some positive things as well. We're going to have a look at complaints from Muslim people. We're going to have a look at Tommy Robinson, hear what rubbish he's got to come out with. And the other thing I just want to say is people have strong views. I know that. And I want... how can I put it? I'm going to try and not give my views, but that'll be difficult. But what I want people to do is, yes, give your views, but don't attack other people. You attack the argument, not the person. Put your views forward logically, sanely, not, oh God, all immigrants need to be deported, because that's ridiculous. What about people that have lived in Britain for 20 years or all their life, born in Britain? You've got to be sensible. So we want some reasoned discussion, because it is an issue that has to be addressed. There's no doubt about it. But addressed in a normal, sane manner, not by riots, not by throwing bricks at police or police dogs, not by attacking people who don't look like you or have a different religion from you, etc. That's not the way to address it. Something else I just want to say, I haven't managed to keep up with emails today, or messages, or comments. So I'm sorry about that. I do like to keep up normally and answer people one way or another, but I just don't think I'll be able to today. So just so that you know, that's not that I'm ignoring you, because then people sometimes take offense because they know that I normally do reply. But if I ever don't reply, it's not because I'm being horrible. It'd just be because other things are going on, maybe. At the moment, there's a few things going on that aren't very good. So just because of that. So where are we going to start? Gosh, Right. Oh, so on top of all that, then I'd already prepared that I was going to talk about the riots and the vigil and some positive things. Then there was a press conference today about the Manchester Airport arrest. Now, do you remember that? There's two Muslim guys arrested at Manchester Airport. There's a lot of controversy about whether the police were too heavy-handed, because one of the policemen did stamp on one of the guy's head and kick him in the face, even though he was already prone. And then it turned out, so this aggression, if you like, or this problem was between two lads or two guys, and apparently it turns out that one of their children was there, meeting their mother off an aeroplane at Manchester Airport. And there's been a lot of controversy as to whether they deserved the treatment they got. Were the police too heavy-handed? And now there's been a press conference today by the actual family explaining some of the background to the events. It sounds to me it was just like, again, it's just like this perfect storm, you know, of all bad things conspiring together and ending up in this total shit show, basically. You know, don't think the police dealt with it very well. Again, it's going to be up to you what you believe when you hear the press conference. There's a press conference, it's the family's point of view. And we have to remember, though, as well, that that family, they have another brother who is a policeman, Greater Manchester policeman. So they're not a family that hate the police or got anything against the police. They're a family with one of their own members of their family is a Greater Manchester policeman. So, you know, we just have to decide, did this policeman that gave out the terrible treatment, or to me it looked like overkill, was that wrong or was it justified? A policewoman did have her nose broken during the as they were trying to arrest these two guys, so that probably had something to do with it. Or should the police always show restraint and not go, because the guy, bear in mind, the guy was already on the floor, he'd been tasered, he was totally supine on the floor. Now it turns out as well, the mother, the grandma, if you like, of the child that was there, and the mother of the two guys that were arrested, she was hit in the face by a taser. She's got terrible injuries. So there's a lot to this story. I believe that the policeman in question has been suspended pending an inquiry, so we'll see what happens. But I think we'll start with that press conference, and just see if you feel, hi Maria, see if you feel any differently after you listen to the build-up to what happened, because really, from what I can see from this, again, all the question of whether you believe it, because it's just what the mother's saying, that this incident really started, she was on a flight coming into Manchester and she received a lot of racial abuse during that flight. I would, gosh, you know, the trouble is, if you are a Muslim, especially a Muslim woman, it's difficult to hide it. If you're wearing the hijab, you know, people can see. You know, it's not like for the men that, like, people, they might not know for certain they're Muslims, they could be anything. But for a woman, you know, that the hijab is like a target, isn't it? And apparently, we're going to listen to exactly what the lawyer says. This is what happened on the plane as she was coming into London. This is where this incident started.
There has been repeated use of the word context when the family have been given no opportunity to provide this. The family have been subjected to horrific racist and Islamophobic abuse on social media, and there has been a campaign of disinformation in an attempt to justify alleged police violence. As far as we are aware, there have been no proactive attempts by the GMP to monitor or to investigate the further hate crimes perpetrated against this family. I have now spoken to Catherine Bates, the regional director for the...
Now you can see the woman, the mother, she still has the remnants of the injuries that she sustained from the taser, from being hit in the face by a taser.
The IOPC with regards to lodging aftermath, and then to claim publicly that they could.
So I'm going to fast forward it a bit because I want to get to the bit where he's saying what happened on the plane.
And accused of criminality, their family fully into their own hands. In our democracy, we have the right to expect that those in uniform will not act as thugs and will act within the law, and that any force used must be reasonable, legitimate, and proportionate. The two young men sat here today, along with their mother and family, are left devastated and traumatized by the incident at Manchester Airport. Despite the clear attempt by some to place disinformation in the media and on social media, the young men sat next to me do not have a single criminal conviction, not even a speeding ticket. In fact, members of the family are serving police officers with Greater Manchester Police and other members of the family in other areas of the country.
Oh, and other areas of the country. So I do think that's important. We're not talking about a criminal family. So obviously something happened. And, you know, I'm not excusing their behaviour. One of the, I think it was the guy here on the right, he definitely gave the policewoman a broken nose. So we can't excuse his behaviour. But anyway, let's see the context. As he says, everyone's been saying, oh, context is important. But it's important from all sides.
And Ahmad himself has undergone an interview process to join the GMP. Today is about setting the record straight and issuing a warning to Greater Manchester Police that leaking or using so-called police sources to justify alleged criminality by their officers can only be seen as a deliberate attempt to interfere with the IOPC investigation. I want to start now with what sparked the incident, something that we have heard nothing about to date. Mrs. Shamim Akhtar was traveling back from a holiday in Pakistan. She was feeling unwell on the plane and as a result used the empty seat next to her to be able to sit more comfortably. Shortly after making use of the seat, she could hear a male muttering in the row behind her. At first, she paid no attention, but then the male went out of his way over the course of the next several hours to subject her to a tirade of alleged racial abuse. He repeatedly called her a bitch. He used the P word and referred to her as a P bitch. Mrs. Akhtar, for several hours of the flight, was scared the male was going to become physical and assault her. Despite her appeals to the Qatar Airlines cabin crew, they did nothing to intervene. She appealed to the male to calm down, but he refused to listen, despite telling him she was unwell.
I think that's my worst nightmare, for an argument to break out on a plane, because I hate flying. I'm so claustrophobic. If you're on a plane and somebody, now I tell you what, if you are not Muslim or you're not Pakistani or you're not black, you don't know what it's like to experience racism. You cannot even imagine what it's like. I don't know what it's like, but I know a little bit more because I live in a foreign country. And when you live in a foreign country, you know, I've experienced, maybe you won't call it racism, but xenophobia. You know, I've been told to get back to my own country more times than I can remember. You know, I mean, I've been here a long time. It doesn't happen every day, don't get me wrong. But it's happened, you know, maybe 5 times. Some people don't like foreigners, whatever. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, if you try going living in another country, and you will always experience some racism, some xenophobia or something like that. But to be so, you know, and to not be able to hide who you are, you know, you're wearing a hijab for a start. Probably if she would have been another, even if she wouldn't have had her hijab on, she would have gone and sat in front of that guy. He probably wouldn't have even said anything. But it's because of the way she's dressed, because of who she is or what she is, that she's experienced that racism from this guy on a plane in a confined space with no support. I mean, if you believe, it's alleged, of course. I believe, and why, you know, I don't think that there's a reason why this was such a high volatile situation. And, you know, high volatile situations don't usually just come out of nowhere. There's normally a build up to them, isn't there? There's normally a backstory. But, you know, I just think that would have been awful.
The male began to call her a pea bitch again, and the male stood up behind her. He was towering over her and hurling abuse. It was a mixture of abuse in English and in Arabic. At this point, she became increasingly frightened and intimidated. He was over 6 foot tall and was of large build. The male's wife intervened and told him to stop and asked him to sit down. However, the male continued, and his children were also ridiculing Mrs. Actor. Even though she was feeling...
And these children as well, you know, these people, I've seen this in these riots, children, if we would take their child to a riot or even a peaceful protest that might turn into a riot, you know, it just reminds me of the Nazis, you know, and making their children against foreign people or the Jews or a certain race. And I think, yeah, there's backstory to come here. You know, this is alleged what she's saying. So, you know, we have to wait and see what happens with the other person's side of it. But I do think it's important to remember this is a family. Not a trouble family, you know, with who are always getting into trouble and with criminal records. This is a family with many police officers actually within their family. So that is not alleged, that is true. So I think we have to take that into account. I was going to say, so Charlie lives in Spain, same as me. He is saying he gets called a giri. That means that's like Paki. I've been called a giri. You know, so all these giris living in Spain, that's just as bad an insult as saying, oh, all these Pakis. It's a bad word, you know, it's an offensive word for foreigners. It's not another one is Chanis, giris. You know, they use them in Spain against the British. You know, not only the British, anyone who's not Spanish. Some people, they do that, you know. So I think maybe that's why I always sympathise a bit more with immigrants and things. So I know how it feels to be different in a different country. And you know what? Sometimes you don't even feel that until you do start to integrate properly. Because before you can speak Spanish, you wouldn't know if someone called you a giri and smiled at you. You wouldn't even know they were insulting you. You'd just smile back at them, wouldn't you? But once you understand everything, I think, and then you start to understand that not from everyone, don't get me wrong. And as I say, I think it's rare. It's rare in all the time I've lived here, but it has happened. And if you didn't realise what somebody was saying about you, you know, because of the language and things. So I just can't bear, you know, to me, I'm a citizen of the world. Do you know, like, I don't feel like anybody shouldn't be here or I shouldn't be anywhere. Nobody has the right to tell somebody where they should live or where they shouldn't, in my opinion.
Extremely unwell, she forced herself up and walked to the rear of the plane looking for a seat. She sat down at the back on a random street, however, was told to move pretty much straight away as somebody else was assigned to the seat. She had no choice but to come back to a seat and sit down, and the abuse continued for several hours. The male continued to intimidate her by shouting racist abuse and by being a bully. Once the flight landed, Mrs. Actor says she walked off the plane and walking towards the baggage claim area, she felt something hit her hand luggage and hitting her behind. She looked back and saw the male standing behind her, and from what she could make out, he was using his hand luggage to repeatedly bump into her. At that point, Mrs. Actor began to cry. She was extremely traumatized. She was scared. She was upset and stressed, and she even collected the wrong suitcase, which she did not realize until she eventually got home that evening. As soon as she exited at the arrivals, she saw her two sons and a six-year-old grandson waiting for her. She broke down into tears and told them that what happened to her over the last several hours, and Mrs. Actor's sons questioned her.
See, the thing is, I didn't know that a 6-year-old grandson was there as well. Oh my God. And then the thing is, she's got off and she was upset and she's told her sons. And, you know, it's getting me a little bit emotional because I wouldn't even tell my son because, you know, my son, it's like, you know what, they wouldn't be happy that somebody had been calling their mum, things like that, you know. So maybe in hindsight, she shouldn't have told them there at the airport. But I think, you know, she was obviously upset, and she did, but probably wasn't a good idea. But hey, you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? But they're bound to be angry, weren't they? You'd be angry, you know, if it was your mum that somebody had been talking to like that.
Which was Fahir and Ahmad, as to what had happened and who this male was. She told her sons that the cabin crew had failed to assist her. She wanted to leave, but when they walked past Starbucks, she noticed the male in question, and Mrs. Akhtar froze. Both her sons approached the male and questioned him regarding the abuse. The male was rude and proceeded to laugh in her son's face, and an altercation took place. Following this, the family left Starbucks and headed towards the car park. When they got to the car park, Fahir was paying for the parking. I will summarize some of the details because of the ongoing investigation, but police officers, who were two females and a male, approached Fahir, and then, without identifying themselves, immediately grabbed Fahir by the wrist. And I have seen, and many of you will have seen, the footage that has been broadcast by the Manchester Evening News, some of it heavily pixelated. But the context that the family wishes to provide is that if you watch closely the footage, that Fahir is immediately grabbed by the wrist, as can be seen on the CCTV. The male officer proceeds to grab Fahir by the neck, and it is alleged that he hits Fahir's head into the ticket machine, at which point the other son, Ahmad, asked the police officer to move his hand from Fahir's neck, as he was not resisting arrest. Ahmad and his mother, Shamim, were shocked at the unnecessary aggression and alleged violence shown from the start. There was no immediate attempt to speak to Fahir, to ask him to step aside, to caution him, or to simply say, "Can we speak to you for a second?" The family appreciates you have seen leaked footage with pixelation of the top of vital events as they unfold. However, this is what the context of what took place. When Ahmad asked the police officer to remove his neck hold, it is alleged by him and his mother and others that the male officer then proceeded to punch Ahmad twice in the side of his head, at which point Ahmad falls onto the ground. Mrs. Akhtar also falls to the ground as the officer pulls her and Ahmad down due to the fact that she was holding Ahmad from behind. The officer, whilst punching Ahmad, pushes her to the ground, and she looked up and saw the officer firing his taser at Ahmad, at which point she screamed, "They've killed my son," in Urdu. And as you can see from the CCTV, pandemonium breaks loose at that point. At this point, Mrs. Akhtar, seeing Fahir running towards the officer, and saw that he is also tasered from behind and lands face first, at which point the officer falls down with him. Mrs. Akhtar then goes to Fahir and can be seen leaning over her son as he lies motionless on the ground. The taser that is used is a prohibited firearm and licensed by police officers to use, and it can emit up to 50,000 volts of electricity. At no point do you see on the video Fahir reaching for any officer's firearms, as is later claimed in the immediate press release from the GMP, nor is he in fact doing anything other than lying motionless face down. It is at this point, as the officer stands up, he proceeds to run and kick Fahir in the face. Mrs. Akhtar then tried to pull her son's head away, and as the officer then attempts to stamp on his head, as can be seen in the graphic video at this point, both brothers are compliant.
I think if that was my son that they were doing that to, they would have had to shoot me to get, because I would have gone mental. Honestly, I'm not dead powerful, I'm only little and that, but I'll tell you what, if somebody was doing that to my son, I honest to God, I would go absolutely mad. Whatever, I wouldn't think about the consequences. You know, that's your son. If it was your son, your daughter, or whoever it was, you would lose it. You would lose it. I think, you know, you just would. I'm sorry. If anybody, if you don't think you would be like that over you haven't got children, then if you can't understand that, because that's your instinct.
Fahir is incapacitated. His brother is sat some distance behind on a seat with his hands on his head, with officers keeping him under control. The officer then proceeds to lift his foot up and appears to stamp down on Fahir's head. Mrs. Akhtar states that she attempted to pull her son's head away as she thought the officer could have killed her son at this point. She genuinely believed at this point that her son was dying as he was limp and unresponsive due to being tasered. The male is alleged, as seen in the video, then kneels down, the male officer, kneels down on Fahir, placing his knee on his back whilst he is still limp, and then looks up straight at Mrs. Akhtar whilst he has his knee on Fahir's back and he is not moving. At this point, it is alleged that the male officer still has his taser drawn, then using his right hand, it is alleged, he strikes Mrs. Akhtar directly in the face using his taser as a weapon. At this
They hit her in the face with a taser. Oh my God.
point, Mrs. Akhtar never, prior to this or during that point, is presenting any threat to any police officer. At this point, Mrs. Akhtar screams as she holds her face. She is terrified that she would now be subjected to the same violence as she alleges her son would. This is the bruising that Mrs. Akhtar had on her face. You'll get copies of this at the end of the press conference. But this is the bruising, some of which you can still see on Mrs. Akhtar's face today. She was left bleeding from below her eye. This is what Mrs. Akhtar alleged she was subjected to. And at no point did any officer approach Mrs. Akhtar to check on her well-being or her welfare. At no point did anybody seek to get medical assistance for Mrs. Akhtar. And as she screamed, as I say, she thought that she would now face the same violence as her two sons did. Mrs. Akhtar then held her face, as well as holding onto her son Fahir. She noticed the officer walked off behind her, and she was scared that this officer would attack her from behind. She looked back and noticed that he then pointed his taser at her other son Ahmad, who was sat down with his hands on his head and was complying. Even though she had been attacked, she struggled and stood up. And so the same officer that had allegedly attacked her and her son Fahir then proceeded to kick her son Ahmad and drag him down on the floor and use his taser as a weapon to hit her son on his head. Another officer then sat on top of Ahmad and pinned his head down to the floor and proceeded to threaten him. At this point, Mrs. Akhtar just stood up between her sons who are lying on the floor. And at this point, she can hear a 6-year-old grandson crying and her son Ahmad telling her to go to his nephew. Mrs. Akhtar touches her face and noticed she was bleeding from a cheek underneath her left eye. She was stood there and didn't want to leave her sons as she was genuinely feared for their lives. And she then noticed the officer that kicked Fahir in the head go over and she tells him to stop. At this point, the officer tells her to step back, and then a female officer pushes her away as she is moving away. Another female officer then comes behind her and pushes her back, pushing her back away again. She was left dazed, she was crying, she was disoriented, but noticed the two officers with Ahmad roll him over onto his front, and at this point he was handcuffed from the rear, and now they were kneeling on his chest. The officer then grabbed Ahmad by the neck and pushed his head into the floor before then getting him up and taking him away. She then sees the other officer lift Fahir and also take him away. No officer attended to her injuries. She was bleeding from beneath her eye. No officer approached her to see if she or her 6-year-old grandchild, left with luggage strewn everywhere and clearly distressed child crying for his father, required any assistance. Mrs. Akhtar was ultimately helped by a passerby who saw what happened and taken home. Fahir also heard the scream from his mother, which he believes was when his mother was hit in the eye with the front of the taser gun. At this point, he has no idea where he was or what was going on, or he was picked up, but he was dragged out and placed against the wall outside.
Now, I just want to warn you that now there's some bad, unless they've edited it out, there's some very bad language coming up from the police, the way the police spoke to this lad, allegedly. So I'll let you do, you have to decide whether you think it's true or not. But just to warn you, I don't know if they're going to bleep it out or if they're going to leave it in. So I watched this live on Sky News, and of course they couldn't bleep it out. And it is quite bad language that apparently allegedly, the policeman used.
Fahir states that he broke down into tears and the verbal abuse continued. Then it is alleged that the male officer came and kneeled down next to Ahmad, and it is alleged he said to him, "You dirty fucking cunt, you think you can hit my officers? I'm going to kill you when I see you in my uniform or out." These are the allegations that Ahmad.
These are the allegations, so we have to remember they're allegations. But, you know, as I said, I'm sorry, this family, you know, they've got his brother is a policeman. There's other police in the family all over the UK. They're not a family to me. I think they've chosen the wrong family because, you know, they're trying to, the way they treated them. I think the reason they treated them like that was because of the policewoman getting a broken nose. And you know what? That would hurt. That's your colleague. Your colleague gets a broken nose, you'd be fuming. Of course you'd be fuming. But then you shouldn't be a police person, because police people are supposed to show restraint. You know, as difficult as it must be, that is their job.
Members of the family make. Hearing this, Fahir said to the officer, "Why is your body camera not on?" He said, it is alleged, "I will show you why." He grabbed him by the neck and handcuffs, lifted him up. He proceeds to push his head so far down where it reaches his knees and drags him along, making him walk. It is alleged he takes him around the corner where he can't be seen by anyone else or his brother, and throws him face down on the floor and puts all his weight on top of him with a knee over his neck. He then says something along the lines of, it is alleged, "Do you want my camera on now, you dirty cunt?" At this point, fearing for his life, all Fahir claims he is thinking about is that he is going to be killed. He stays quiet and doesn't say a word. There is, of course, much more alleged incidents and verbal abuse that takes place that should be on CCTV or police cameras if they were, of course, switched on. In terms of the requests that we wish to make of the IOPC and Greater Manchester Police, firstly, as stated previously, we expect all CCTV and police body cam footage to be retained. The family is aware that all police body cams of those arresting and detaining officers were not active on that day at the time of the incident, and asked the question, why? Secondly, our armed officers are highly trained professionals expected to take split-second decisions, which can have the power of life and death, but quite rightly, they are expected to justify the decisions they take. Carrying a gun does not give a license to kill, does not give a license to use disproportionate violence or to escape accountability.
Okay, now I'm not going to, this conference goes on, it's an hour long, the whole thing, so I'm not going to go, I just wanted to, that's the essence then of the context that they're putting on it. Now, you know, normally you get the one side of the story, the other side of the story. The truth is normally somewhere in the middle, isn't it? But just, I do believe this woman experienced racial abuse on the plane. I do, but, you know, there's got to be a reason for this. You know, for a family like this that are, you know, they've got no, you know, they've never been in trouble with the police before, etc. And they've actually got law enforcement officers in their family. I don't believe that it just started from nothing. I don't believe that. You know, there's a catalyst for most things. Probably was the weather hot as well then. There's been something in the air the last couple of weeks. But somebody asked about the video of the actual stomping. Let's have a look at that. So this, of course, is when he actually stomped on his face.
Last night, groups gathered outside Rochdale Police Station in protest. Sky's North of England correspondent Charlotte Leeming reports in a warning it contains distressing images of the incident from the very start.
Caught on camera and
I can't watch it without actually flinching. It's not right what he did. The man was lying face down on the ground and being tasered. So, you know, I understand them using force where it's necessary, you know, especially if they really did think it was some sort of terror attack or he was going to steal their gun. This is the brother sat over here with his hands behind his head. You know, he's been subdued. And this guy is prone on the floor when this
shared widely across social media. A police officer armed with a taser kicks and stamps on a man's head as he's lying face down on the ground at Manchester Airport. An eyewitness filmed the incident between firearms officers at Terminal 2 whilst responding to reports of an altercation.
just watch it
That
one more
outside
time.
Rochdale Police Station in protest. Sky's North of England correspondent Charlotte Leeming reports and a warning it contains distressing images of the incident from the very start.
Yeah.
Caught on.
Personally, in my eyes, I can't see how that's justified. But anyway, it'll all come out in the wash. Seems to me that whoever the guy was that was on the bloody plane giving the racial abuse, hopefully, you know, they've probably buggered off back to where they come from now, because I don't know if they're on holiday in the UK or if they were British. Don't know anything about them, but hopefully, yeah, hopefully the passengers on the plane and the air crew, etc., will be interviewed. I mean, there's a lot to come out, isn't there? There's a lot to come out about that story. This is what we know so far. It's the investigation is ongoing, but the police officer has been suspended. He should be suspended until the result. You know, I think if that was you or your family member who had been kicked in the head and stamped on, even if they had done something wrong, I mean, none of those rioters got thrown on the floor, kicked on the head, stamped on the head and kicked in the face. We're going to look at a little bit of that in a minute. Like in these riots that they've been having lately in the UK, you know, the people have been goading the police, literally goading them, and the police haven't done that kind of thing to them. The police should not do that. Sorry, but they should not do it, whatever. And especially not when someone is lying face down on the ground, completely acquiescing to what they're doing. There was no need for it. You did it at a time it was not necessary, in my eyes. Anyway, so that's the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. Now I've got some nice things. Now, it hasn't all been bad news about the riots and things. So there's been people from a mosque, this mosque, the Abdullah Killian Mosque, which apparently is one of the most historic mosques in Britain. You know, I don't know much about the Muslim religion. I don't know much about mosques. I just don't. But it's nice to see. Let's have a look at this. That there can be moments of hope. So I watched this on the BBC this morning. It was very, very nice. This guy, he is, I think, the leader of the mosque. He's a very articulate guy. This is what I think is needed. So what they did is we're in Southport when I think it was Southport. Where is this mosque? Oh, no, it's in Liverpool. So there was a demonstration outside the Abdullah Killian Mosque in Liverpool. Was one of those demonstrations. So what this guy did, he arranged for them to get in, because they've got a kitchen in the mosque where they prepare food, etc. And they prepared burgers and chips, loads of burgers and chips. They were in constant contact with the police to find out, like, because sometimes it was too dangerous, you know, to go out or try to talk to the demonstrators, or because at one point it was just too volatile. But they were in constant touch with the police. And when it died down, when the volatility died down a bit, and of course all those guys out there had all been drinking and rioting, it's hungry and thirsty work, they went out with burger and chips for them and tried to talk to them and said, look, what are the issues? This is what needs to happen, because, you know, a lot of those people that are rioting, it's not even about Muslims, I don't think, or immigration. People are, after the last 14 years of austerity, people are at the end of their tether. And the trouble is, when you're at the end of your tether, it's easy to strike out at anyone, even at the people that maybe they're not responsible for it. Anyway, that's so I do think discussions need to happen. I watched another really interesting interview on Sky News with a guy who used to be a member of the EDL, hated Muslims, was so angry about all of it, he felt like he could kill someone. Anyway, he said his life changed when a Muslim leader like this guy invited him in to the mosque to talk about the issues. Come on, let's talk about it. What is it you're most scared of? What is it you most hate about me? What are the issues? And it changed his life, and he's now an advocate, like trying to create peace. To me, it's a question of what you think about. We're all on a journey in this life. This life is not easy for anyone. Doesn't matter what religion you are, doesn't matter where you come from, even if you're rich but we're all on a journey, and it's hard. It's easier if you've got money, don't get me wrong. It's always a little bit easier if you've got money, but not necessarily. I mean, money doesn't make things, can't buy your health. It can buy you the best medical treatment, but it can't, make you well again necessarily. We've all got things going on, and I think especially in Britain over the last years with the austerity and the horrible government that we've had, people are at the end of their tethers. They just can't cope anymore. There's children starving in Britain. People can't afford to pay their bills. They can't afford food. So the Muslims are an easy target. But if only they knew, actually, anytime you can go to a mosque, and they do give out food freely and things like that. They're like, anyway, never mind. I'm not getting into the ins and outs. But so they went out and gave these burger and chips out, tried to get talking to the people that were left there. And the images of their photos went viral. Thank God, something positive going viral. So among the many stark images emerging from the recent wave of unrest across England were photos of Muslims embracing protesters outside the UK's oldest mosque. A demonstration was held outside the Abdullah Killian Mosque in Liverpool at the end of a week in which misinformation about the Southport attacks was blamed for stoking Islamophobia. And a counter-demonstration drew several hundred more people. And once the situation had calmed, mosque volunteer Adam Kelwick and other worshippers crossed over in an attempt to speak to those present. And the mosque chairman, Dr. Abdul Hamid, a family doctor, believes there is a fear of the unknown, adding if they don't get answers, they will try and find any excuse to label you. So these lovely pictures, I honestly could make me cry because it's just been so horrible, everything since those poor girls were murdered, and they've just been forgotten in everything. It's just all been so horrible, and so much hate, and it's just heartbreaking. It's just so nice then to see some nicer images. Why can't people just accept each other? I don't know. Anyway, scratching below the surface of what was going on, Mr. Kelwick said he found people not to have been motivated by anything in particular, just lashing out in a state of general frustration. He said, none of the people I spoke to mentioned Southport. It's nothing to do with those girls. I tell you, those three girls, most of those rioters wouldn't even know those three girls' names. I don't even think they knew what they were protesting about. I think they're just angry, fed up. Everyone's angry. He said there were some beautiful interactions as the group from the mosque were able to break bread and listen to some people's concerns in deep conversations. But it really makes me cry because I just wish, people could find a way of talking rather than arguing. Photographs showed the sharing of food, hugs and handshakes were among the more positive posts being shared widely on social media. Some of the most vocal protesters, after everyone else had gone, came inside the mosque for a little tour, Mr. Kelwick added. I mean, it's just lovely to see that picture. Just is. And I watched him, so he was very good to listen to because he was very calm. Didn't get angry. It's all this anger when people are talking. You watch that horrible Tommy Robinson or whatever his real name is, Yaxley Lennon. He's just shouting all the time, shouting hate, anger, just enticing people to violence. If he's got something to say, why can't he say it in a normal way? He says he's a journalist. He's not a journalist. Anyway, so Dr. Hamid, who works as a GP in a deprived area of Liverpool, said, the far right are a spectrum. So there are those who are very, very extreme, but there are people who have certain issues, whether political or personal, and they need to vent that. If you don't provide them with a platform to do that, they'll go onto the streets. Mr. Kelwick, who became a Muslim in 1999, has engaged with several groups in open mosque forums during the last decade. They want to get that bloody Yaxley Lennon. I'm not even going to call him Tommy Robinson anymore. Yaxley Lennon. He needs to go. The guy who lives in Spain is on holiday in Cyprus and he's got an Irish passport, but he's always talking about, he's a patriot. They need to get him in there, discussing the impact of grooming gangs, amongst other topics. So there are grooming gangs, but you know what? There's not only Muslim grooming gangs, there's loads of grooming gangs. But that doesn't get, there was a grooming gang recently in Scotland went to court. They were all British. Every day these grooming gangs get caught, but they're not always Muslim, but sometimes they are. So it does need to be addressed, but you don't address it by going out murdering all Muslims. Anyway, he said there was nearly always progress. Every single event has had people who are very angry, shouting. British people are very angry, aren't they? They can't seem to have reasonable discussions anymore. Very upset, but everyone comes together after a time. He remembered how one man nearly broke down in tears after being invited to a restaurant meal following an event. He said no one had treated him like that before, and all we'd done is bought him a kebab. So yeah, there are thugs amongst them, that there are also genuine concerns. The priority has to be safety and security, and everyone needs to calm down. And mosque leaders are conscious there is less hope for others. So engagement with some groups was encouraging to see, but the more extreme far-right activists should be banned, like other Islamist groups. These very far-right extremists, they are terrorists, just the same as radical Muslims are terrorists. They're anyone who threatens normal people's lives, and disrupts British society, they are terrorists. So speaking after Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer met religious leaders in the region, he said there is the argument that the police have the powers to stop the violence, but I think what is important is their words of hate and polarisation need to be controlled. So this leads me to, of course, this other issue. How much has platforms had to do with it? How much has X, and Elon Musk allowing Yardley Lennox, whatever his name is, back onto the platform to spread his hate. He will say he doesn't spread hate, but he does. I've watched a few of his speeches just this morning, and in the end, I just have to turn it off because it's shouting, anger, aggression, lumping everybody in one boat, just hate Why spread hate? I don't understand. You know, try and spread some peace. So talking of which, now what we're going to have a look at is the vigil last night. I think it was like, God, time goes so quick with all this. I think it was last night. This was the lovely vigil they had for the girls who were murdered, which was a terrible event. Terrible event. But at the end of the day, the perpetrator of it, one was not Muslim. He was a 17-year-old boy, a Christian. He was born in Wales. He was born in this country. You know, it's not. So the whole thing, why the Muslims getting all the hate? You know, why? Because there's been this ramp up over years about it. You know, and it's not right, because yes, there are some radical Muslims, just like there are radical far right people, but there are lots of very peace loving most Muslims that just want to carry, just like everybody else, just want to carry on their lives, bring up their children. You know, they're not pedos, they're not anything bad. Most Muslims, you know, you will get a percentage of every religion, every race that's radical, that's, you know, not like that. And these kind of things are going to make it worse. Anyway, let's have a look at this. So
this sea of bubbles being sent up into the air to mark the memories of those 3 girls who were attending a Taylor Swift themed dance class last Monday when they were killed, BB, Elsie Dot and Elise. And this event is a poignant reminder of how young they are, but how a young community are also having to come to grips with an act of violence that has impacted so many people here in Southport. Just to give a reminder of how this is impacting that community, the organizer of the event who we have spoken to, her daughter was at school with BB King. She put this event on because she wanted to do something to help the community and give children a way to reflect with these bubbles, these kisses sent up to heaven. And she's told us that she's been messaged by people across the country who wanted to take part, and she's in
kisses sent up to heaven. You know, this is what it should be going on for those girls, in the memory of those girls, not all those riots and things. What, you know, just this is what really matters: communities, children. And this particular Southport community, they don't hate the Muslims. You know, they've all clubbed together. The Muslim shop owner whose shop was destroyed and all his you know, all his stock ruined, they had a GoFundMe for him and replaced it. You know, they appreciate each other in the community. Why is it always these bloody... And the other thing I've noticed about the rioters, lots of them, they're middle-aged, even older people. Then, you know, there's lots of young people as well, like sort of real teenagers, like 14, 15 years old. But then the ages go up to like 69 years old. They're just there like drinking beer and taunting the police. We're going to have a look at that in a minute, but anyway.
Encouraging them to do as they are doing here and send bubbles up where they are, whether that be in their back gardens or on their front doorsteps. The event is here and meant to mark closure for the children in the community. Earlier on, we had a singer who performed a special song for the children, and we've had so many reminders, as well as these bubbles going up to the air and these hundreds of people gathered, many children. We've had many reminders of the impact this is having on the community from beyond. I've spoken to an Italian man today who was looking for the scene of the attack on Hart Street, which is less than a mile away from here. He wanted to pay his respects. So another man brought us a poem marking the lives of those young girls. And just coming back to that event, it was about this time last week that we were learning exactly what the scale of the tragedy was. At that point, we were told that 2 children had died in the incident that then went up to 3, and that their dance teacher, Leanne Lucas, was injured trying to...
Oh, do you know what? I wish I would have been there. I love all them bubbles. I just want some of them great big bubble ones. It's just so lovely. That's what it should be. Vigil. sympathizing with the girls and the families, not turning it around for your own political reasons. And I'm sorry, Sefi, what you're saying is ridiculous. That lad was born in Britain. He's not an illegal. Just honest to God, it's just a silly thing. I'm sorry that you're saying, because he's not illegal. So why are you even saying that? Can't you see that? It just, anyway.
Protect them. We've now seen since.
There's a difference between views and what is just not true. And it is not true that guy is illegal. So that's just a fact. That's not an opinion. That's a fact.
Fueled by disinformation, scenes across the country very different to what we're seeing now. This is a reminder of innocence and hope, a stark contrast to the pictures of rioting that we've seen not just in Southport but across the country. These bubbles are representing those lives. In fact, in the middle of this sea of bubbles going up into the air, a bubble artist sent up 3 bubbles. Those 3 bubbles are meant to represent the 3 victims. And just to tell you a bit more about how the community is reacting here, people we've spoken to have come here because they felt deeply impacted. This is only a mile from the scene, and we of course know that someone's been charged in connection with this case, but for a community very much in mourning, a week on, this is a chance to reflect, to send those kisses up to heaven, and to help a community heal, and to help children process what has happened.
So there you go. That's something nice. Thank God. Sensible people doing sensible things instead of going out and just causing trouble. Now I'm running out of time because, unfortunately, I don't mean that bad. I've got a class in half an hour. So I just want to show, I'll probably not be able to show you the whole things of the other things I was going to show. But now, where is it? I wanted to show. Anyway, I can tell you about it if I can't show it because I haven't got time. But, a Muslim lady rang up LBC, spoke to Vanessa Phelps, who, of course, she's, now I think she's Jewish, Vanessa Phelps. If this was people attacking synagogues and things like that, she'd be going mad. If that's what it was. Anyway, this lady phoned up, was heartbroken because she's a Muslim lady. She couldn't, she's frightened to go out the house. She's was explaining her background. She was born in the UK. Her parents were born in the UK. Her grandparents, her grandfather fought in the war. Those people there that do those riots, they're the ones that always bang on about, they'll be buying poppies, when it comes to Armistice Day and things like that. They've never fought in a war. They wouldn't know how to fight in a war. They wouldn't know what had hit them, because they're just good at taunting the police when they know the police can't do anything. Maybe they do need to bring back national service, but unfortunately the poor young people that'll have to do it. But some of these bloody boomers, they need to do some national service because, boomers, they haven't ever fought in any war, or done anything. They bang on about it all the time. They're always going on about the Second World War. Their parents maybe fought in it, but they didn't. They didn't. Same as me. My dad fought in it. He didn't fight in the war for this, And, I'll tell you something about my dad. My dad was typical of his generation. He was racist. He was racist when he was young. When I was younger. We used to have so many arguments because I've just never been racist. Because when I went to school with all different creeds and colours and what have you. Racism, it just, obviously it was a thing for them, but I didn't see it. I didn't see that. My dad was a bit racist. And then what happened, the trouble is though, didn't know anybody who was, from any other religion or any other, he just didn't know anybody. So it's like, I think they call it unconscious bias because it's not exactly racism. It's more ignorance, really. It's just like you just don't know anybody and you just make assumptions about, you know, like you now, you might make assumptions that all Russian people are this, or all Chinese people are that. And of course they're not. They're all just people just like us, and they've all got there's cultures, you know, but you know, most modern societies, they've got the same worries. They worry about how they're going to feed their children. They worry about work. They worry about all the same things. So then what happened was my dad did start working with a Muslim guy called Sonny. I'm never forgetting it. Oh, and he loved him. He was like, oh my God. And it was like an eye-opener to my dad, because his racism that he had at one point was total ignorance, really. Just didn't know anybody who was Muslim, because that had not been his life experience to bump into anyone. And then once he started working with Sonny, and he loved him so much, and he changed. My dad changed a lot of his views as he got older. At least he had an open mind to do that. Anyway, you know, that's, my mum was the same. You know, they were definitely racist at one point, but it wasn't like a racism. Like, this is blind racism that these people have, because it's like they've decided, you know, that all Muslims are this, or all black people are that, or all, I don't know, or whatever, or whatever. That's not the same as never having actually met anybody and got to know them, and then, you know, realizing that everybody is just the same underneath. Everybody's the same. You know, you might have your different religions, but we all have worries about the same things. We all love our children. We all sort of hope for a good world for them. We don't want nuclear war. We don't want war in general. You know, it's just ridiculous to think that somebody's different just because of the colour of their skin or their religion. So I think it's you doesn't get it, Sephi, to be honest. But anyway, I respect your opinion. But it is a fact. It's not illegal. That's not an opinion. Anyway, let's go. So I'm going to show, unfortunately, I'm going to show a little bit of Yaxley Lennon. He did this interview on CNN. Oh my God. Now, it's important to, you know, we talk about free speech. You've got to give people a voice. But listen to, you know, give him a voice. This is how he talks. This is how he talks.
Every single one of you to watch my expose of the group you just named, Hope Not Hate. I've done a covert recordings. I've already done an expose documentary on that organisation to prove that they pay people to lie in the media, that they co-opt the media, that they...
Everybody lies except him. No, this is Yaxley, whatever his name is, hiding out in Cyprus. He was on holiday. He was lying around the pool in between, you know, putting hateful tweets up, encouraging people to violence. In between that, he was on holiday with his children. Then he got very upset because he said that people had said where he was, and his children were scared. Oh my God, God forbid that Yaxley's children should be scared. Doesn't matter that everybody else's children were scared to go out, or, you know, the children in those hotels where refugees fleeing from war, they probably had children there. They were scared. Doesn't matter about them. The only children that matter are his children. He is, honest to God. And watch him. He's shouting all the time. Shout, 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 shout.
They manipulate the media, and that they use the media as a weapon against people. I've already exposed that. So I urge every one of you. When the police come out and say it's not terrorism related, let me give you one example of their lies previously in the UK. In 2016, if you Google this, Russell Square attack, a Muslim went into his mosque and he said that he wanted to kill non-Muslims. Do you know what the mosque done? They prayed for him. They didn't report him to the police or security services. They prayed for him. Now, he left that mosque that day and he went and stabbed 7 people in Russell Square while screaming Allah Akbar. Okay, he done that and he murdered an American tourist. We were told it had nothing to do with terrorism or jihad. That was clearly an act of jihad, clearly an act of terrorism, and our security services and our media lied, because that's what they continue to do. They lie and they deceive us every time.
But you know, the thing is, it's all very well him saying that, and then, you know, lucky for him, he lives in a free country where he can say things like that. But you know, that's the other thing he has to remember. He can moan about Britain all he wants, and now everyone's liars and this, that, and the other. But you know, in a lot of other countries, he wouldn't even be allowed to speak up. So he should be glad that he lives in Britain and he can say, well, he doesn't live in Britain, that he's British, and he could say those kind of things. Now, I'm not denying that there are radical Muslims. There are. And I'm not in favour of that at all. But I don't think, you know, they would pray for him probably if he went into a mosque. Even though he hates them all, they'd probably pray for him. Just as, you know, he was, as those right-wing people were stabbing them, they would probably pray for him. The other thing you've got to remember is they don't have a fear of death, of course. So, you know, they're not, having said that, they don't want their children to die or be hurt. But they do believe they're going on to a better place. So, but let me just fast forward it a bit, because unfortunately I haven't got time. I would play, what, 11 hours? This can't go on for 11 hours, surely. Let's listen to a bit more.
Into our country. We have a problem with a hostile community coming in and declaring war.
Yeah, see, now he's starting shouting again.
That's where we have a problem.
Now, UK's mainstream media is claiming that you have, quote unquote, fled the UK amid contempt of court proceedings. Have you, and why so, when you claim to be a patriot?
No, I haven't fled the UK. I'm on holiday with my children, a holiday that was planned. I never received any court documentation.
He's a liar because he doesn't even live in the UK, lives in Spain, not far from me.
Summonsing me to court. I'm not on bail to attend court. So once again, you're being lied to. There's a process that a court has to go to if they want somebody in court. That process is not to give information to far left extremist organisations who then notify me of my court date, which is exactly what happened. And am I going to go to court because a far left extremist George Soros funded organisation tells me to? No, I'm not. If I'm summoned by a court with paperwork, yes, I'll attend the court case, but I haven't been. I'm on holiday with my children. I've not run away from any court case. In fact, I look forward to these court proceedings because it's the British judiciary that's on trial, not me. Nearly 30 million people have watched my film, which they tried to ban. 30 million, okay? Only 9 million.
Yeah, it's quite scary that so many people seem to think he's brilliant. I know some people that watch my channel think he's brilliant because they leave comments. Well, that's fine. You want to like him. You want to like someone who spreads hate. That's your prerogative, but I don't like him. But anyway, so sorry, I haven't got time. I would show more of him. It's not, you know, it's not that I'm, you know, shutting him up on my channel. I'm not. I don't like him. I don't agree with anything he says, really. But, you know, I'm quite happy to, you know, give his side of things. Okay, where am I going now then? So, yeah, I've not got very much time left now, unfortunately. Oh, yeah, I wanted to show you this because this was, well, it's not funny, really. It's not funny. But I don't know if any of you saw that Mark Rowley, who's the police chief, is Sir Mark Rowley. He's the Metropolitan Police Chief. And he was at the Cobra meeting yesterday morning, which was, you know, the meeting for, you know, where they were deciding what to do, like the meeting of the government and the police chiefs to decide what they were going to do about all this violence on the streets. And this guy comes out, there's the Sky reporter just trying to ask him a question about, is there such a thing as two-tier policing? He got the right grabbed this guy's microphone and threw it on the floor. So, you know, it wasn't exactly a very measured response from the chief of police, from the Metropolitan Police. Now, he says now, he came out with a statement and said, no, he didn't grab it and throw it on the floor. He just pushed it out of the way and accidentally it went on the floor. Well, again, you decide what you think.
When you can't edit PDF files, luckily there's a better alternative. With
Oh,
today's
sorry,
sponsor,
is it
PDF
like
Element
it?
Pro. You can add new text or images to a previously existing PDF. Once you're done with all the edits, you can use the converter and convert the PDF into any format. You can try it by using my link down below.
Are we going to end two-tier policing, sir?
And then off he scuttles to his car. This poor guy stood there. His mic's been chucked on the floor. I mean, there wasn't, you know, is it about what did the meeting go badly for him? He said afterwards, no, it all went well. It was very constructive. Obviously not.
Did he just do that? Did he just do that?
You don't really expect that from a policeman, do you? Like, he didn't have to answer, obviously. He's obviously irritated at the question. But he just have to say no comment or just walk past. Doesn't have to say anything or do anything. But he grabbed this guy's mic and threw it on the floor.
Are we going to end two-tier policing, sir?
Oh dear, it just tickled me that. I've got to watch that another couple of times because it just made me laugh. It's like, he reminded me of, I don't know if you were ever watching when Piers Morgan got the ump on Good Morning, and he did he had a hissy fit and sort of stomped off the stage. It reminded me of that. It's like he's had a bad meeting, obviously he's in a bad mood, and he's just like had a hissy fit.
We're going to end two-tier policing, sir.
He's the chief of the Metropolitan Police. Come on. I mean, come on. What chance has Britain got? Really? What can he turn around now and say, oh, no, you shouldn't, violence is not the answer. And he's literally picked that guy's mic and chucked it on the floor. Just terrible.
Are we going to end two-tier policing, sir?
Oh, God, there's going to be loads of memes made about that, isn't there? Hilarious. Okay, now because as I say, I've not got much room, I haven't got much time left. So I just want to look at this incident with Elon Musk. Honestly, God, piss off, Elon. Get out of British politics. It's nothing to do with you. So a war of words has broken out between Elon Musk and the Prime Minister. Now, I tell you, Keir Starmer, I do think that he's, people, everyone's got their views. I know some people like him, some people don't like him. I personally like him. Don't like everything he does. There's some things that I don't agree with that he's done already. But, there are other things. I think generally he will try his best to make Britain a better place. And of course, all this has happened. I mean, he must think, oh my God. So everyone was having a go at him, saying he was going on holiday. Well, he hasn't gone on holiday. But the other thing you've got to remember is his holiday was, he didn't know he was going to be Prime Minister. This election was only called in May or something. He probably already booked his holiday. Some people book their holidays in January, don't they? He's thinking, oh, well, you get the recess, the parliamentary recess. He didn't think there'd be an election till October. So he didn't know he was going to be Prime Minister. He probably booked a holiday. Of course, now he can't go on holiday, and that's fair enough. He shouldn't be able to go on holiday when, anybody who's the Prime Minister or a minister, a cabinet minister, when trouble breaks out in your area, in your domain, your holiday's finished. That's one of the prices to pay for being Prime Minister or a cabinet minister or whatever. So anyway, Elon Musk, the billionaire owner of X, started a row. He's trolling Keir Starmer over riots gripping the UK amid concerns online that disinformation is fueling the unrest. So in a comment on his social media site below a video of rioters setting off fireworks at police, Elon Musk said, civil war is inevitable. Oh my God. Now, he shouldn't have said that. To me, if anyone's going to have a civil war, it would be America before it would be Britain. This was quickly rejected by the Prime Minister's spokesperson, who said, There's no justification for comments like that. And anyone who's whipping up violence online will face the full force of the law. And Musk then replied to a social media post from Keir, which criticised violence towards Muslims. So he took this completely out of context, I think, because Keir had said, this is not protest, it's pure violence. I will have a standing army of public duty officers. We will ramp up criminal justice. We will apply criminal law online as well as offline. We will not tolerate attacks on mosques or on Muslim communities. And then Elon Musk put this snarky comment, shouldn't you be concerned about attacks on all communities? Well, obviously he is, but at the moment it's attacks on Muslim communities. So that's why he said that. So Keir will be thinking, oh, why did I say that? You know, Keir Starmer's probably thinking, oh, you know, sack the communications team. Because, of course, he should have said, we will not tolerate on mosques or on Muslim communities, nor on any community. I mean, you know, in hindsight, that's probably what he should have said. But it's obvious that he didn't mean, oh, yeah, go out and attack anyone as long as it's not Muslims. What a ridiculous thing to say. He's deliberately doing that. It's like, you know, sometimes people do that. It's like he's trying to lure Keir Starmer out to say something because he knows Keir Starmer had made a snarky comment about online, you know, social media companies. So it just makes you wonder you know, is he going to ban Keir Starmer from Twitter? You know, he allowed Donald Trump back on. He's allowed Yaxley Lennon back on. Is he going to ban Keir Starmer? Maybe. And then, I mean, you know, I just thought Elon Musk, he's like a kid, isn't he? Because he's the owner of this social media platform, but he's running it he's not running it like a business. You know, like you don't really see Mark Zuckerberg or whatever his name is interfering in Facebook in that same way. Elon is that micromanager. He interferes and everything. So he calls it free speech, but it's actually not free speech because I'd like to go on his tweet there and say, F off Elon and keep your nose out of it. But I'm not going to do that because he might go on my Twitter then and ban me from Twitter because he's got the power to do that. So he should not be making comments like that. That's my opinion anyway. But, you know, again, as with everything, you'll all have your own opinions on that. I'm just going, actually, I haven't been back to, I hope you're all behaving in the chat because I've been back to the chat. Hi, ACW. Oh, Seffi. What do you mean he'll go down in history as he'll go, not worse than Liz Truss even then? He's only been in power 4 weeks. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, this is the parallel universe coming back again. This is the parallel universe coming back. Hi, ACW. Well, Seffi, I knew you would agree with Elon. I knew you would somehow. But anyway, be interested to see if you ever have any problems. I don't think it'd be Elon that'll be helping you out, though, is it? You probably have to contact the police or your MP or something. But there you go. The worst in history has been in power for 4 weeks. Oh, my God. That is just a bias. Complete bias, not even giving somebody a chance. After the worst governments that we've had. Liz Truss. Oh, my God. Anyway, never mind. I've learned you can't argue sometimes with certain people. I'm not arguing with you anyway. You're entitled to your opinion, of course you are. Just a shame you're wrong. No, it's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. Okay, now, what else did I have? I had loads of things to show you. But to be honest, I've running out of time. But I want to show you this. Now, you might like this, or you might not. But this is like a parody account going back to X. Let's have a look. I'll find it. Oh God, I've forgotten the name now. I've got to look at him. I think it's a parody account anyway. Yeah, it's called Sanford Police. Now, it is a parody account. Oh, let me share it. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's quite funny because it's Sanford Police, England's smallest police force, committed to catching criminals under Swan. Don't report crime. Emergency, yes, 999. No, 101. Parody satire. So it's parody satire. When I first saw it, I thought it was real because, you know what, this parallel universe that we live in, you never know what's real or what isn't real. But they're verified. But apparently most of the people that give disinformation are verified. Apparently. Anyway, I don't know. So there's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet. Dr. Mike Hunt advises, do your research, look at bios and profiles, verify information, and don't just blindly think what you're reading is true. Together we can beat the scammers and those intent on misleading others. Oh dear. But there's a couple of videos on that are quite funny. Now I've oh, sorry, this just makes me laugh. So, IOPC referral has been made after a vicious assault by police on an innocent member of the public. Now, I'm sorry, maybe I shouldn't be laughing, you probably, but when you, these guys, they're just drunks. And he's old enough to know better. So he's there, and look, is this the policeman that shoved the thing in his face? Now, he shouldn't have done that, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, this guy is, you know, he's not young, is he? He's drunk. He was up there baiting the police guy, look.
Oh, come on.
It just reminds me of Manchester on a Saturday night, all the drunks, you know. It's like, if they weren't there rioting, the bit. Now, my son has a theory, and I agree with him, is it's because there's no football on at the moment, is there? So we didn't win the Euros. England didn't win the Euros. They've not got over that yet. There's no football on. So they've got to do something, you know, with their dole money, go out and I don't know. They're just any excuse. Go out, get drunk, bait the police. And then that policeman, again, he shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have hit him in the face. But the reason the guy fell over wasn't because of the force that the policeman used. It was because the guy was drunk. Yeah, of course, they're struggling to get him back up again because he's a big guy. He's really pissed off. That policeman's thinking, for fuck's sake, what am I even doing here? Why did I join the police in the first place? You know, they must be really fed up. You know, we sort of imagine that's your job, you know, to go and just deal with drunks like that. You know, when there's proper police work that they could be doing.
Oh, come on.
Sorry, I just think it's funny. Oh dear me. Oh, and this, of course, this was the opposite. So this was the sky. I said the opposite. I mean, from the other side. So I'll just show you that I'm being fair, because this was the Sky was watching this live when it happened. That's the Sky reporter who was doing an interview, and this guy come up behind him. Must have been terrifying. a Muslim guy shouting, I think he was shouting Free Palestine. Let's have a look.
But I think, apologies for the language you're hearing, but essentially.
Yeah, that was scary too. Oh.
Do not mind anyone.
Oh yeah, they tried to slash their tires as well.
Going to do the same to us.
So yeah, I don't know who'd be a policeman or a Sky News reporter. Yeah, see, it has things like this, which it is sort of quite funny, but maybe we shouldn't make jokes about it. But you know what? Sometimes you just think, oh God, if you didn't laugh, you'd cry. White wing supremacist swan attacks foreign students. Oh dear me, I don't know. Not funny, but funny. Anyway, I've got to go because I know my student has just arrived in the Zoom class. So I hope I haven't offended anybody. Oh dear. Yeah, I think you should all be prepping. Because just in case you can't go out the house for a while. So anyway, it's the crazy world out there at the moment. It's all crazy. Oh my God, it's crazy. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you really soon, as always, in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. And please, God, let these riots stop. Please, God. Anyway, thank you. Let me find my... In fact, you know what I'm going to finish on? I'm going to put the picture up of the girls. Because let's not forget them. And all this other stuff is background noise. But this is what's important. Put some little music on.